Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is your host, Webster Tarpley, here in Washington, D.C. And as everyone can see now, the political framework comes into movement. Let's start with some comments about the contestation of members of Congress, the confrontations, splendid outburst of democratic expression on the whole in these various town halls. Let's, however, interpret it properly, not jump to conclusions, and also focus constantly, what's the next step? What's the next link in the chain? First of all, just in terms of class conflict, this is an example of class conflict, and you'll see as the analysis goes on how true that is. This is a class conflict between the working people, the working poor, the unemployed, and the middle class in general, against the Wall Street puppet of the moment, Obama. Don't ever forget, Obama is a Wall Street puppet in everything he does. He represents, to that extent, the class adversary of the vast majority of the rest of this. Republican operatives and various kinds of Austrian school think tankers are trying to cloud this elementary point. This is a mass protest against the establishment as a whole. A lot of the anger, frustration, resentment that are being expressed today belong to Bush and Cheney, the Iraq War, and above all, the bailout, $1 trillion for Wall Street that was proposed by Paulson, the Republican Secretary of the Treasury, and approved by Mad Dog Bush the Younger, Republican president, the last time I looked, with Dick Cheney rumbling in the background. And then, of course, Obama. It is a joint Bush-Obama depression. It is a Bush-Obama bailout, and of course, Obama has taken it to new heights. But these policies are all rooted directly in the Bush administration, and indeed that's one of the reasons Obama is taking flack. There are a lot of people out there who are there because they're protesting Obama because he's too weak, that he essentially represents Bush with different slogans but otherwise on automatic pilot. This is a vote of no confidence in the U.S. ruling class as a whole, not just the left-oligarch foundation wing or the Democratic Party wing. It is a vote of no confidence in the U.S. ruling class as a whole. We have 3 or 4 examples of Republican members of Congress who have also been confronted. So look at the content of this in the broadest possible way. A vote of no confidence in the ruling elite itself, the most essential feature of this. It is a vote of no confidence in the political parties, Republicans, Democrats, and any others. It is, of course, a protest against Obama, against his incompetence, his weakness, his failure, his arrogance, his desire to loot Medicare and Social Security to get more money for bailouts of his Wall Street handlers, backers, and controllers. It is a general strike against Wall Street. They are very definitely part of the resentment, because when people say stimulus, half the time when people say stimulus, they mean the bailout. And the bailout, of course, is a Wall Street operation, lock, stock, and barrel. It is a mass protest against academics, quackademics of the Larry Summers, Ben Bernanke type, the corrupt world of modern academia. It is a protest against the media whores who come out with slanders and have been doing this, first selling you 9/11, then selling you the Iraq War, then selling you Obama, right? They have already struck out. In the broad sense, it's also a protest against elitism and oligarchy, against the arrogance of incompetence, right? We used to have the arrogance of power. Now we've got the arrogance of impotence and failure. What are the factors that play into this? Well, try, first of all, the world economic depression. Starting last year, in particular, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, AIG, Fannie, Freddie, you know the drill. It is a world economic depression of unprecedented proportions and genocidal power. It's obviously also a protest against unemployment, joblessness. We've now got probably 25% unemployed and underemployed, right? Official figure for unemployed is now almost 10%. Official figure for underemployed and unemployed, 16%. Add in those who have given up in despair and those who would come into the labor force but never have. You're getting up there to 20 to 25%. It is a protest against foreclosures. The fact that we've got the highest rates of foreclosures, I believe, that we've ever had. We've got, let's see, the total foreclosure figure is 360,000 in the last reporting period. 360,000 Americans have lost their homes. That's 360,000 families. And at the same time, Obama shovels the trillions across the room to Wall Street. And Bush, of course, started the shoveling with Paulson. And Bernanke is the common denominator, and Geithner is the common denominator. It is a mass protest against globalization, against the infamous globaloney world economy that I write about in Surviving the Cataclysm. It is a protest against bailouts once again, against all of that money given to Wall Street. It's a protest against insecurity, the fact that you don't know what's going to happen, right? You're always one paycheck away from being homeless. It's a protest against declining standards of living. Yes, indeed, this is absolutely fundamental. The finding is, in Surviving the Cataclysm, the U.S. standard of living has declined by two-thirds. One-third is what you've got left. The U.S. standard of living has declined by two-thirds since the days of Lyndon B. Johnson, 1966, 1967. Two-thirds decline in the standard of living over 40 years. And that, of course, factors in the increased number of working people per family, right? Not just husband anymore, wife also, working longer hours, working extra hours every day, extra weeks each year, and so forth. The declining standard of living, minus two-thirds over 4 decades. It's a protest against cap and trade. It's a protest against the lunacy of a Malthusian ruling elite who really believe that polar bears, snail darters, and spotted owls are more important than whether your kid gets to go to college, whether you have a job, and whether the living standard is rising or falling. The Malthusians in the Obama cabinet want your living standard to decline. And then, within this entire framework, it's a protest against euthanasia and genocide, which are unquestionably parts of the intent. Sometimes spelled out in the text of the bills, more often left to the writers of the regulations, the Cass Sunsteins of the world, who are going to come along and take the law and turn it into regulations. And Cass Sunstein, as we now see, has got genocidalists. He's a genocidalist himself, but he's got other genocidalists breathing down his neck and whispering into his ear. He's got this character, Richard Posner, at the University of Chicago. In those circles, a judge who is interested in imposing various kinds of euthanasia and genocidal standards. And then in the background, the monster, Peter Singer, the disciple of Jeremy Bentham, who basically thinks that animals are more important than human beings. The life of an animal is more important than the life of your child. A dog. This is now a guy who thinks that animals should have rights. Animals should have legal rights. Of course, in this cabinet, he's a moderate. Holdren thinks the trees should have rights. We'll be back in a minute.